The 40 years of wandering begins at the end of chapter 14. By chapter 20, it's all but over. 40 years have passed during chapters 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Chapter 16 is the biggest event during all that 40 years, or 38 years, or whatever it was by that time. We don't know when during the 40 years it happened, but it's called with a capital letter, the Great Rebellion. This is the big one. There may have been some others here or there, as there have been some all the way from Egypt to now. But in chapter 16, you've got the really big rebellion to where Israel was rescued by God by a hair's breadth. They were all but gone. Moses was all but dead. They were finished with. Israel was finished with Moses and with Aaron. Their 40 years, and I don't know if it was 10 years, 20, 30, long time. And this rebellion came up, but they were weary of the desert. They were tired of Moses. They were tired of they were tired of the manna. They were tired of the cloud. They were tired of the following the cloud and the fire. They were tired of the whole thing. And in verse 1, it says, now Korah, and you probably don't remember, but when we went through Exodus, your first reading assignment in Exodus in chapter 6, I pointed his name out to you. He's Moses' first cousin. He's in the tribe of Levi among the Kohathites, the ones closest to the priesthood. Korah, the son of Izhar, that's Moses' uncle. The son of Kohath, the son of Levi. And Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Peleth, sons of Reuben. They rose up before Israel with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. Now, if you have 250 of the top leaders of Israel, they are not acting alone. If you had 48 governors march into Washington and go up to the president and make demands, they wouldn't be there representing themselves. They wouldn't have the courage to do it. It'd be political suicide. They would be representing the views of their constituents. This is a rebellion against Moses among all Israel. All of them. Except for, of course, for the few righteous in every generation you find them. So we've got 250 of the chief men, plus the men of the greatest reputation, Korah, Moses' first cousin among the Kohathites, Dathan, Abiram, On, who were superior to the 250 princes. They called them out by name. Who were puffed up against God and against whoever God had chosen. I was thinking about this yesterday. This Korah, Moses' first cousin, was among all the Levites when they were given as a gift to Aaron and his sons. So here's Korah, Aaron's uncle, being given to Aaron as a gift. You have to humble yourself. Not only to Aaron, but his great-nephew, Eleazar, and Ithamar, he was being given by God as a gift to them. You have to humble yourself down to do it God's way. If he was as proud a man as Moses says he is here shortly, he wouldn't have liked that ceremony when the Levites were consecrated. He would have considered himself superior to not only the other Levites, being from Kohath, and Moses' first cousin, but superior to Eleazar for sure, and maybe Aaron. I'm not too sure about that one. But what he wants is the priesthood. He liked the system where the head of every family was the priest. He didn't like God switching that. God took that away from all the heads of Israel, placed it in Aaron's hands. And they're using that as part of that plus the suffering in the wilderness. They had hot days. They had some times where they had to look for some water, scrounge around. They had days when they didn't have meat. Had to eat manna. They used all of this, plus Moses' promise to take them to a land of milk and honey, and he hadn't done it. The fact that the 10 spies were right in saying that they couldn't take the land, this is the way they think now, not the way it is. Use all this history, Moses and the Levites' destruction of Israel when they were trying to liberate themselves with the golden calf and worship God in all places. All those things were a part of this. Verse 3, they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. You guys take too much upon you. You don't have that much authority over us. All the congregation are holy. Every one of them. And the Lord is among them. Why then do you lift up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord? This is a perfect example of slander. Here are the princes that all Israel looks up to, even Kohath, and even Dathan and Abiram and On, even above the princes. And they're looking at it, people saying, you're such wonderful people. God loves you as much as He loves Moses. Yeah, we're all holy. We're all God's people. Look, His tabernacle is in the middle of all of us. He doesn't live in Moses' tent. He lives in His own tent. You're all special. You're just sweet. I would have had you in that land by now. I know a secret road. And when Moses heard it, he did what he normally did when the rebellion broke out. He just went to God. He fell on his face. Who was he? He was wanting to get out of it anyway. He didn't make that bush burn.
Sure did. Tried to get out of it.
He didn't even want to go to Egypt. So okay, God, these guys you want to take over, I'm all for it. They can have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you. He's probably not saying, really? Really? No, he knew what kind of spirit these guys had. It wasn't God that sent them there. He could feel that. He knew God's spirit. And he rose up then after he had humbled himself to God. God must have given him this discernment. He spoke unto Korah and unto all his company, saying, tomorrow the Lord will show who are His and who is holy. We can't make that decision. Somebody comes to you saying you are all holy, ask him what his authority is. Where'd you get that from? He'll show who are His and who are holy. And He will cause him to come near to Him, even the one He has chosen. He'll cause him to come near unto Him. In other words, Moses didn't quarrel with them. God told him, let me take over. Let me show them. So Moses said, tomorrow God's going to show everybody. Now there they were opposing Moses, probably with a big crowd that followed him up there. Somebody finally got the courage to stand up against this dictator. Moses says, well, I'll tell you what. Let's all stand before God tomorrow and let Him pick. Well, what could Korah and the 250 princes say to that when the people were watching?
They were listening.
Could they say, no, No. Then the people would get suspicious. They had to play the part. They had to keep it going. This do, you take censers, Korah, and all his company. You put fire, a censer is for burning incense, a little plate. Put fire in it. Put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow, and it shall be that the man whom the Lord does choose, he shall be holy. And then he repeats to Korah what Korah just said to him. You take too much upon you, you sons of Levi. And then Moses said to Korah, listen to me for a minute. Verse 9, does it seem but a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to Himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto them? And He has brought you near to Him. and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with thee. And you seek the priesthood also? That's what he was really after. He saw Moses charging all of Israel 1,365 shekels for the firstborn. He saw Moses take those shekels to Aaron. He wanted the money. He saw people bringing their sacrifices and saw Aaron eating it, and his family, and Eleazar and Ithamar and their families. He wanted it. It was covetousness. He wanted the priesthood. He wanted the reputation. And Moses got to the point. This is the cause both thou and all thy company are gathered together against the Lord. What is Aaron that you murmur against him? Aaron's doing nothing but what God said. You murmur against that, you're murmuring against God, not Aaron. Slander is always against the Lord, not the person. And then Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, we will not come up. And this is what else they said to Moses. Is it a small thing that you have... They probably heard his message to Korah, asking him if it was a small thing. Now they're mocking Moses. You talk about small things. Is it a small thing that you brought us up out of a land that flowed with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? And now you puff yourself up altogether to be a prince over us? You have not brought us into a land that flowed with milk and honey. You haven't given us inheritance of fields or vineyards. I know what you're up to. You're going to put out the eyes of these men once they get up there. You got your guys waiting. Your Levitical friends that did your bidding to the last group of Israel, you got them with their swords waiting. We know you better than that. We're going to stay here where it is safe. We will not come up. Now look, where were Dathan and Abiram on from? Reuben. Where was Korah from? This was the bad part of town. Moses didn't want to go there at night on a bicycle ride. And when Moses sent down to them from the tabernacle and said, come up here tomorrow, they said, you come here. We're not going there. Why? Because they felt absolutely safe here. This rebellion was all over, but here was the head of it. This was the bad part of town, south of the tabernacle. When they accused Moses of laying a trap to put out the eyes of those men, Moses became very angry. It was one of the times when he was right to be angry. And he was so angry, in verse 15, he said to the Lord, respect not thou their offering, and that sealed their doom. If Moses ever asked God, do not accept their offering, God would never, they were damned. There was just no mercy, no forgiveness, no access to God's altar. That's angry. I have not taken one ass from them, neither have I hurt one of them. And Moses said to Korah, be thou and all thy company before the Lord, thou and they and Aaron tomorrow. And take every man his censer, and put incense in them, and bring ye before the Lord every man his censer. 250 censers, you also, and Aaron, each of you his censer. Well, okay. They took every man his censer, and put fire in them, and laid incense on it, stood in the door of the tabernacle of the congregation with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them, the whole nation, against them, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the congregation. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell upon their faces, and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with the whole congregation? And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, okay, tell the congregation, get away from the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Glory to God. You want me to spare the congregation? Okay, tell them to get back up. Woo! And Moses got up from where he was at the tabernacle and went down to the bad part of town, to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke unto the congregation, all the people down here. He said, my advice is to get away from the tents of those men, lest you be consumed in their sins. So the people, they kind of backed up. They got away from the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram on every side. Now try to imagine that. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram might not have been feeling quite so safe right now. They must have gotten a little bit, what's going on here. They're standing at their tent doors with all, and they weren't right beside each other like houses now. It was a field. They had tents, they had cattle, they had possessions. But there they were with their children and their wives and their servants, all of them hating this man Moses, standing in front of their tents. And the congregation that they were deceiving and trusting in to protect them backed away from them. Some more than others. Might have been a few scragglers that stuck to it. We're not told about that. But that would be the normal thing. Have some hotheads refuse to leave. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood in the door, this is in verse 27, of their tents, and their wives and their sons and their little children. And Moses said to the whole congregation down there, this is how you will know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own mind. None of this was my plan. Moses never made any plans either. If these men die the common death of all men, they just get old and die, if that happens to them, or if they be visited after the visitation of men, if they have an accident and die, axe handle fall off and fly off and hit one of them in the head, or a snake bite, or if they die the way you've ever seen anybody die before, Moses is telling the whole congregation, then I'm a liar, and I've made all this up, and I've just deceived all of you. I'm not from God. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, and all that appertain unto them, and they go down alive. That's what the word quick means. If they go down alive into hell, then you shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them. And the sand, and the tents, and the animals, and the children, and the wives, and the servants, and the friends, and them. It's like they were standing, and like the earth opened up his mouth and plop, took a bite out of Israel. Just opened it up and closed back. That's what it said, closed back. And the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed them up and their houses and the men that appertained unto Korah and all their goods. They and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit. And then the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. Now that is an amazing event. I mean, you hear them screaming, the wives and the little children screaming alive, going down into hell. And then the earth closes back and it's utter silence. Nothing but sand where these tents and these people were just a few minutes before. You got to know Moses was sent by God.
Yes.
And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up also. Run! And at the same time, those 250 men up here in Korah were burning their incense before the Lord. And at the same time the earth opened up and closed back, fire came out from the tabernacle to show everybody who was his, and consumed the 250 men that offered incense. Now try to imagine Aaron standing there, fire blasts out of the tabernacle and burns everybody alive standing all around him, and he's left standing there with the incense going up. Aaron didn't do that. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak unto Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest, that he take up the censers, those 250 censers. They didn't get burned up. And scatter thou the fire yonder. Get rid of that fire they had in there, for they are hallowed. The censers of these sinners against their own souls, let them take those censers, make broad plates for a covering for the altar. For they offered them before the Lord, therefore they are hallowed. Anything that comes in there to the holy, near the holy place and offers to God becomes hallowed. Those men became hallowed, but they weren't sanctified by God to endure it. And they shall be a sign unto the children of Israel. And Eleazar the priest took the brass censers, wherewith they that were burnt had offered, and they were made broad plates for a covering of the altar, to be a memorial unto the children of Israel, that no stranger, which is not of the seed of Aaron, come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he be not as Korah and as his company, as the Lord said to him by the hand of Moses. Now, you know, you can build something up in yourself so much, it's like zooming down a hill, and then you find out, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do that, and you slam on brakes, but you're still going to slide a little bit. Well, Israel has had the brakes slammed on this rebellion, but they're in their spirits, they're still in that rebellion mode, and so they slide a little bit. Well, on the next day, in spite of all that God has done to Kohath, to the Levites up here, and incense burners and Reuben, in spite of all that, the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron, saying, You killed the people of Jehovah. We're going to stand up for Jehovah against you murderers. Now, how in the world did Moses make the earth open up? It doesn't make sense. They're still skidding. The rebellion had gotten so great and so forceful, the demons of it just pushed, they couldn't stop them. Now they're accusing Moses and Aaron of murder because of the men that died. And it came to pass when the congregation was gathered against Moses and against Aaron. This is the next day. The whole congregation back up there again against Moses and Aaron. This was a big rebellion. Moses and Aaron, they looked toward the tabernacle of the congregation, and God rescued them. The cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. And Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of the congregation, probably for safety. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Get up from among this congregation, that I may consume them as in a moment. Moses and Aaron fell on their face, but this time God didn't ask him. This time when Moses and Aaron fell on their faces at the door of the tabernacle, Moses felt something go past him. He said, Aaron, get your censer, boy, I need you. There is wrath gone out from God. God was going to wipe out the whole nation. Moses said to Aaron, Take a censer, put fire in it from off the altar, and put incense on it, and run quickly out into that congregation and make an atonement for them. For there is wrath gone out from the Lord. The plague has already started. Aaron took as Moses commanded and ran into the midst of the congregation. And behold, the plague was begun among the people, and he put on the incense and made an atonement for the people, and stood between the dead and the living, and the plague stopped. So the plague moves out past Aaron and Moses and starts killing people gathered against Moses outside. Aaron runs out past the dying people. They're already done for. They're not going to live. Has to run past the ones dying and put incense on it, hold it up to God, and ask him to stop, and the plague comes up to him, and everybody on the other side of him lives. Everybody in front of him dies. Whew. He stood between the living and the dead. And they that died in the plague were 14,700. That's not all that were gathered against Moses. That's just the part that died before he even could get there with his censer. Besides them that died about the matter of Korah. And Aaron returned unto Moses unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the plague was stayed. Now, just reading chapter 16, you would think that Korah's whole family died with Korah, but they didn't. And we're very blessed that they didn't, because if all his children had died with him, the prophet Samuel would never have been born. He came from that rascal. And you're told in Numbers chapter 26 in the second numbering that the children of Korah didn't die. So there is a scripture for that. Chapter 17, God wants to provide Israel another sign that he has chosen Aaron. The people just don't believe it. So in chapter 17, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to all the children of Israel, and take every one of them a rod according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes according to the house of their fathers 12 rods, and write every man's name upon his rod. And you shall write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi, for one rod shall be for the head of the house of their fathers. And thou shalt lay them up in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall come to pass that the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom. And I will make to cease from among me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you. So Moses got all the princes of Israel, take 12 rods, write the name of their, if not the tribe, the head of the tribes at that time, the man who was the leader, write it on the rods, and he brought the rods into the most holy place overnight. And then the next day, Aaron or Moses, whoever, went in and got it, brought them out, and all the rods were the same except Aaron's. In verse 8, came to pass on the next day, Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi was budded, brought forth buds, bloomed blossoms, and yielded almonds. This is for a sign for Israel, that they would stop their rebellion. He's still working on this great rebellion attitude, still trying to get them to stop skidding. And Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord unto the children of Israel, and they looked and took every man his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony, to be kept for a token against the rebels, and thou shalt quite or entirely take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. And Moses did so as the Lord commanded him, so did he. Now I don't believe that rod was put inside the ark. I think it was just laid up with it. And the children of Israel, see what they got out of it. Spoke unto Moses, saying, Behold, we die, we perish, we're just all dying. Whoever cometh anything near unto the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Shall we be consumed with dying? They just never understood, didn't they? Like Esau, it never in his heart made sense that there were holy things and unholy things, and that holy things were more valuable than unholy things, so that even if it cost you some unholy things to hold on to the holy things, it was worth it. He never understood that. That's what's called being profane, where in your heart, holy things aren't bad, they're just no better or have no more value than regular things. Esau never comprehended the difference between holy and regular. This never made sense to him. And there are characters through the Bible, and I know some now. I know people in my lifetime. They just cannot comprehend the concept of the value of holy things as opposed to ordinary things that are valuable, such as food. Esau considered Abraham's birthright that he owned to be no more valuable than a pot of soup when he was hungry. It never clicked with him that the blessing of Abraham in his life was so valuable that you starved to death to hold on to it. That's how valuable it is. It's more valuable than your life because it's valuable for eternity. God desires all His children to esteem Him to be worth something far more than what we have here. That's our safety, and it's His joy. Chapter 18 is about tithes and offerings for the priests and the Levites. Whenever they brought their tithes, they didn't necessarily have offerings with it. The offerings could be brought at a different time, and there were more than one offering. It was first fruits. They had first fruits offerings. They had the offerings from the sacrifices. They had, I don't know, there's 2 or 3 different things there that we need to know the difference in. Let's start in verse 20, though. I want to point this out to you. The Lord spoke to Aaron, not to Moses. That's interesting. The Lord spoke to Aaron, "You shall have no inheritance in the land of Canaan, neither shall you have any part among them. I am your part and your inheritance among the children of Israel. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the 10th," that's the tithe of Israel, "for an inheritance for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh to the tabernacle, lest they bear their sin and die." So what he's saying is that all the tithes of all the tribes of Israel cannot be brought to the priest. They are for the Levites. And the Levites take a tithe from the tithe of Israel and bring it to the priest. So the people in Israel, ordinary people in Israel from all the tribes, can no longer bring their tithes to the priest of Israel. Only to the Levites. Verse 24, "The tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites." Verse 25, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Thus speak unto the Levites, and say to them, When you take the children of Israel, the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up a heave offering of it to the Lord, even a 10th part of the tithe. And this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you, as it were the corn of the threshing floor, the fullness of the winepress. Thus ye also shall offer up an heave offering unto the Lord of your tithes which you receive of the children of Israel, and you give it to Aaron the priest. Out of all your gifts ye shall offer every heave offering unto the Lord, the best part, the hallowed part of it. And verse 31, you shall eat your tithes in every place you and your households is for your reward, for your service of the tabernacle, and you won't bear any sin when you eat it after you've paid your tithes on it. So the tithes that the Levites had, they weren't sinning by eating the tithe of the corn or the vineyard or whatever, as long as they took a tithe of that and took it to the priest. Verse 10. I don't think they went into the most holy room. They ate that in the holy place. I don't know why it says most holy there, except that this whole thing can be generally described as most holy, a most holy place for the Israelites for sure, because they couldn't touch it. But they wouldn't have gone into the most holy room to eat their part of the sacrifices. Well, the word place there is in italics, right, Sammy? That means it's not in the Hebrew. That's just been added by the translators. They put it in italics if it's not there. So somebody made up that word place and stuck it there.
I have a question about verse 23.
Verse 23.
Actually, it says a couple different places, and they shall bear their iniquity. I think it also said that Aaron had to bear the iniquity of the priesthood or something.
How do you put it in English? I feel what it says. In several other places, like you say, when the Levites are consecrated, they're going to bear the iniquity of the tabernacle. They didn't have to make a sacrifice to atone for touching the tabernacle. They were, if you want to say it that way, they bore the iniquity of doing so. Aaron bore the iniquity of approaching to God, even though God said approach him, and anointed him. And Aaron was ceremonially clean, morally clean. He could do it and stay alive. He still bore the iniquity of doing that. That's the difference. It says it to me, the difference between even the things that were holy on earth and God. Even doing those holy things at the right time, the right way, the right place, the right person, still compared to God is bearing iniquity to do it. That's kind of the sense I get when I read that. All right, where are we now? Verse 31 and 32, Gary, in chapter 18. You shall eat it in every place. This is the Levites eating their tithes. ye and your households, for it is your reward for your service in the tabernacle of the congregation. And you'll bear no sin by reason of it. Bearing the iniquity of the tabernacle apparently was not a sin. If somebody else had eaten these tithes, there would have been a sin. But they were bearing the iniquity of the holy thing God was giving them to do, but it wasn't sin to them. Well, chapter 19, I guess. The Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron both, saying, This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke. Somebody had to kill that in front of Eleazar in verse 3. Eleazar took the blood and sprinkled it directly toward the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. And then in verse 5, one take and burn the heifer in his sight, everything about her, skin, flesh. So Eleazar didn't get the skin of a cow that time. Even the leather was burned up, everything. And the priest shall take a cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet and throw that into the midst of the burning of the heifer. And then they used the ashes of a heifer to mix with water to sprinkle those that had become somehow unclean, touching a dead body in the main. Touching a dead body became unclean. They had to sprinkle with this ashes of a red heifer mixed with all these other ingredients in water on the 3rd day. It took you a week to be clean after touching a dead human body. On the 3rd day, you had to sprinkle with this water. On the 7th day, you had a ceremonial little offering, small offering to go through. Then you were clean. And God adds, by the way, in verse 14, when a man dies in a tent, whoever comes into the tent's unclean 7 days. Every open vessel is unclean. That's just good hygiene there, playing it safe. Whoever touches one that is slain with a sword in the open fields, or a dead body, or bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. Even touching a grave, how about that? And then it talks about the ashes of the burnt heifer, the red heifer, for using it for purification. Okay? That takes us halfway through Numbers. Your reading is Numbers 20 through 36, and then the little bit in Deuteronomy that I gave you. Oh, here's one more paper. I'm going to hand you this paper for you to answer the 2 questions that I have at the bottom when you read Numbers 34.